Major funding for this program was provided by the New Jersey Historical Commission, Department of State, and the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation.
Morris County in north-central New Jersey is revered as one of the state's most bucolic settings. Important chapters in early American history unfolded here. General George Washington spent 2 winters at Morristown, the county seat. In the late 19th century, captains of industry and commerce, including Mellon, Pitney, Dodge, and Twombly, built extravagant mansions and lives of elegance and leisure in Morris County. Yet, beyond the shadows cast by Morris County's well-known history, is the story of chance man's brothers and sisters. The fellowship of Sunday morning church services, weekend outings with family and friends. Many Americans vividly remember the first half of the 20th century as a time when we shared a civic culture, a culture that took pride in family, town, and country. Yet, before the passage of civil rights laws in the 1960s, racial custom in Morris County, as in much of the North, limited what even the most remarkable people of color could accomplish. This is a story about Black life and community at that time. It is told through the memories and the way of life of 4 Morris County residents. Despite many obstacles, they were educated, built satisfying work lives, friendships, families, and participated in vital church and social organizations. This film is named for James Chanceman Gregory, who was the first Black police officer in Morristown. He began on the force in the late 1920s as a chanceman, an auxiliary officer who filled in when needed. He rose to the rank of sergeant and became one of the town's most popular residents. His life of triumph and integrity became a symbol for the desire of his fellow Black residents to be recognized simply as citizen, friend, and neighbor.
My mother went to college. She went to a school called Boyden Institute in Mecklenburg County, Virginia. Now, Boyden Institute was founded by white Northerners who were Presbyterians. And after the Civil War, they went down there to educate the children of freed slaves. Hampton Institute was for the same purpose. Howard University for the same purpose. All those colored schools, that was a reason for them. 1 or 2 of the trustees from Boyden lived in Morristown here. And that's one reason why our families came to Newark and Morristown, because they would get the girls jobs during the summer. They found out they earned more money here than they earned teaching in the South.
From the turn of the century through the middle of the 1960s, hundreds of thousands of Black Americans moved across the nation's landscape. Blacks left the Jim Crow South for northern urban states where they believed jobs, education, and social justice could be found. The Great Migration is the single most significant development in the 20th century history of Black America.
Well, people largely went as domestics. Then there were those who were entrepreneurs who came and started their own little business. My father and his brother came to Newark. Now that was in the late 1880s. At first, my father worked for a company, DeCamp. It's an old moving business in Newark. My father and his brother became the specialists in moving pianos. That's how Pinkman and Company came into existence. One of the earliest things for the early Negroes who came here from the South was to have what they called hacking, or a taxi business. And then there was a man by the name of Washington, and he had a hacking business. John Gregory, he had an ice business. Then there was Maury Grant, who went to the same college my mother went to, and he had an ash business. The wives of these men dressed very elegantly. Oh, they were elegant. These women were elegant. I'll tell you who stayed with us, which was amazing. Booker T. Washington. We had Mrs. Bethune stay with us, Mary McLeod Bethune, a man named Marcus Garvey. Now, we couldn't go to the white hotels. We couldn't go, even here, you couldn't go to the restaurants for the most part. You couldn't go to eat ice cream parlors even. You couldn't go to the YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association. You couldn't go there. Can you imagine such a thing? We made our own. These families who could afford it, we did our own entertaining. We had our own life, and it was beautiful.
My dad, the foundry worker, and they were moving around quite a bit back in those days. And that's how he worked his way north, coming with the same foundry. Come from Tennessee to Pennsylvania to New Jersey. And as far as I'm concerned, all I know anything about is New Jersey, because I came here when I was a month old. Dad acquired a lung disease from the foundry. Didn't have masks and things back in those days, I imagine. And he caught that, and it killed him back in September of 1933. After he died, everything changed dramatically. I had to leave school to go to work. And work around here then was minimal. The mill out here wouldn't take me because I was too young. But I went to work on a moving van, worked for 25 cents an hour, which was a lot of money. As far as I'm concerned, it's better than nothing an hour.
My family originally came from Rock Hill, South Carolina. They all came north, ended up in the town of Boonton. I don't know how the town of Boonton was chosen, but the majority of my family was here. I was born in Boonton, April 22nd, 1931. Mother was a domestic. She worked for people here in the neighboring town of Mountain Lakes for most of her adult life.
My parents were Robert and Iris Boyce. They were born in Barbados in the British West Indies. They came here looking for a better life. Sometime around 1918, a job became available out here in Morris County with this wealthy lady who was alone. When I lived in Mountain Lakes, I don't know if it was written, but everybody seemed to know there were no blacks to live there, there were no Jews to live there, there were no Catholics to live there. It was a very closed, restricted community. We'll go now to the back of the house. We spent a great deal of time in the back because Mom was the cook, Dad was the butler, so this was our section of the house. Mom and I used to come out here and sit on the step, and she taught me to read. So I can say that my formal education really began right here in the back of this house at Hillcrest Road. My father said, you can't make it unless you're educated. And when I was a little girl there in Mountain Lakes, I must have been about all of 6 or 7 when I started elementary school, when he put me in that big car. I think that lady had a Hudson. He started brainwashing me then. He'd drive me around the high school, and he'd say, when you finish that elementary school, this is where you're going to high school. And he would do this periodically. I mean, there were no ifs, ands, or buts. And after
high school, he said, then you will go to college. And then you will have the tools to live in this world.
The students came from all over the state of New Jersey. They were coming here because the word had spread about the education that you got at Bordentown. And parents were standing in line, so to speak, to get their kids into Bordentown.
While Morris County Public Schools were integrated, some parents chose to send their children to the all-black Manual Training and Industrial School for Colored Youth in Bordentown. This residential secondary school was operated by the state of New Jersey during the first half of the 20th century. It became well known for academic excellence as well as vocational training. The school attracted faculty educated at elite northern institutions, including William H. Hastie, an Amherst graduate who in the 1940s became the first black appointee to the United States Court of Appeals.
You look back and you say, how could we get so many teachers of that caliber in one place teaching, you know, a group of black kids on that level? We had a half day of academics, and then in the afternoon you would go to whatever vocational class you had. That was all part of the whole curriculum of preparing black kids for the outside world. And here's what you have to expect once you get out of here. You know, and you have to be so much better than the next guy because, you know, if you want that job here or you want that job there, you have got to be able to produce.
I'm building me a home. I'm building me a home. I'm building me a home. I'm building me a home.
This is the house that my dad, Robert Boyce, built. He went to the National Bank in Boonton and asked for a mortgage, and they told him, we don't loan money to black people. So Dad decided then that he would dig out that foundation by hand. He lugged the rocks from up in the Torn Park, which adjoins the property, to build that, and he would buy his bags of cement bit by bit. And I have the lanterns that he used at night because he did it when he was off from work. There was an old gentleman that lived across the street. His name was Mr. Douglas. And Mr. Douglas had one leg, he had a wooden leg. And he used to look at my father and say, Bob, you're crazy, you'll never get this done. But God bless Mr. Douglas, he would come and he'd hold the lantern for my father at night and place it where it needed to be placed so he could see what he was doing. And some things were too thick and some were too thin. And after the house got finished and you looked around it, my mom always said, this is some house, she said. It looked like hand made it and foot put it together, but it's here. Daddy had gotten a job as a chauffeur and a butler for, again, very wealthy people in Boonton Township. I was 9 at that time. And we went to live in this big mansion on the hill that belonged to Mr. Clifford Dixon. One morning, I missed the school bus, and Daddy said, Gwen, hop in the back of the car, and I'll take you to school when I take Mr. Dixon to the station. So I said, okay. So he took him to the station, he took me to school, and I was in some class that day, and I got a message from the front office. I was not to go back to Dixon's, I was not to take the bus back to Dixon's that afternoon. I was to go straight up to our house in Boonton Township that he had been building. He said that after I left him, Mr. Dixon said, don't ever have your child riding in my car again when I'm in it. And that was a big offense to my father, it was an offense to me, and he said, nobody will talk to my daughter that way, and he quit him flat that day. And when I got home, all of my belongings were in the house on Rock Lane in Boonton Township, and I never went back to that house.
Picatinny Arsenal in Morris County is a manufacturing center and munitions depot that has served the United States Army since 1880. Despite discrimination, which excluded blacks from many jobs, World War II labor shortages forced Picatinny to actively recruit workers in black neighborhoods. By war's end, black men and women comprised 1/4 of the Arsenal workforce.
I was in engineering division. I was the only black in there. Because, as I say, they sent us to school, and I was one of them that passed. It's huge. It's monstrous. So there's a building here, you might be over there just separating nails for a specific job to do. Or you might be in another building mixing powder. Or you may be in another building making shells. Yet it all comes out in one thing. Bullets. Bullets and bombs.
The attack on Pearl Harbor united Americans as never before in history.
Uncle Sammy, here I am.
Like no other national effort in the 20th century, American involvement in World War II brought into focus the contradictions in American life. African Americans became individual symbols of patriotic service in a society that had historically denied them constitutional rights and equal opportunities. Their service helped to win the war for the Allied powers and strengthen the pursuit of racial justice.
We went out there to San Francisco to learn how to operate winches, to unload and load ships. And from there, we went overseas.
We were unloading a ship, and 3 sailors came by in a homemade canoe. They had cases of beer all over the place and drinking. Till maybe an hour later, we heard this, help, help. And I went to the prow of the boat, which is the forward, the highest part, and saw one guy in the boat knocked out, 2 guys in the water. So unhesitatingly, I jumped overboard. There was a barge that we loaded. I didn't see the barge when I jumped over, and I missed getting killed by maybe a foot. I got the 3 guys together, put them in my motorboat, and ran them back to the ship. I was the second black in World War II to receive a medal, a non-combat medal. It's a soldier's medal for bravery. I didn't do it for that reason. I did it for humanity reasons, but since it came, it's welcome. That was 50 years ago, too. Yeah. He threw me a party when I came back. I could still hear him.
I've got to live the life that I sing about.
Morris County blacks fashioned a remarkably vital community life. Church was the institution that best represented their collective energies. It provided camaraderie, spiritual comfort, and was the hub of social and political activity.
People were very, very close with each other. There was a Baptist church, there was a Methodist church, a black Methodist church, and there was a black Baptist church. And that's where Mom went. I played the piano and organ there all through high school, all through college, and after I got married, I was still playing at that church.
My mother saw to it that I went to church every Sunday. And she taught me, that you treat people like you want people to treat you. My children are the same way. My youngest son is a minister, and that's all has to do with being brought up with a religious background and believing that there is somebody watching over you when there isn't anybody watching over you.
If you lived below the railroad track, it was called the Hollow. That's where the majority of the poor people were. Sunday mornings before you went to church, the Southern Airs would come on. But, excuse me. After church, the Southern Airs would come on. And I lived on a place called Flagler Street. There's a big hill. You could walk from the top of Flagler Street all the way down to the Hollow, in the heart of the Hollow, which is now Martin Luther King, and hear the whole program. Then when you got in the Hollow, you still heard the program.
Thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my
Well, when I was coming up and all my friends would go to the sweet shop in Boonton, I didn't go because I wouldn't have been served. There were 2 sweet shops. There was a drugstore that had a soda fountain, and you couldn't eat at any of those places.
They had a place here called the Palace. Well, all the movies you had to sit upstairs. Had 3 movies. Then along came the Community later years. But the Palace, mostly blacks went there, but all of them had to sit upstairs. So somebody got the bright idea, how are you going to break that up? So buy soda, buy cups, buy candy, buy anything. When you get finished with them, throw them over the balcony. And pretty soon, they broke up the prejudice. You could sit downstairs.
We shall overcome.
On August 28, 1963, more than 200,000 Americans assembled in Washington, D.C. for what then was the largest demonstration in the nation's history. They came to press for action on a pending civil rights bill. But the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom had as much to do with the past as with the future. The march was both a culmination of efforts by blacks to gain a foothold in American democracy and the beginning of a new era of expanded civil rights for many Americans. At the local level, the civil rights struggle was played out in the Morristown school system. In the late 60s, primarily white Morris Township sought to create its own high school and secede from the increasingly black Morristown district. The Morris County Urban League and many local residents protested. In 1971, the New Jersey State Supreme Court handed down a landmark decision unifying the 2 districts into the new Morris School District, recognizing the right to maintain racial balance.
The opportunity came for me to take the exam here for the police department. I took the exam. I came out number 1 on the list, and that was 1957, and I've been here ever since. I started out as a patrolman. I touched all the bases on the way up, and I'm glad I did. In 1989, the chief decided to retire. The table of organization for the town of Boonton consisted of 1 chief, 1 captain, which was me, and 5 sergeants. There were some people in town who didn't want that position to go to me. They felt that there may be a possibility that one of the sergeants was more qualified. The 5 sergeants were all white. I was black. Some people thought it was a black-white issue. I had kind of entertained that thought myself. There was quite a political stink in town about it. The town had special meetings. There has never been crowds of that number before or since. People who came down to champion my cause. The people who were sitting on the board saw that, realized that, and changed their ideas about what they were trying to do. And I am the first black chief in the county of Morris.
I think we need a little more up here.
Hi, John.
Hello, I thought you were sick. Oh, how are you?
All right, big fella,
I'm
yourself.
glad to see you, yes.
You're good.
This
Good
is,
to see you.
well, this is really a tea party. And this is the way my mother would give a garden tea party. And,
John Shaw Pinkman, caterer and town historian. Gwendolyn Boyce, educator. Jesse Evans, war hero and hydraulics engineer. And Police Chief Robert Banks are important figures in Morris County history. With their neighbors, they built lives of accomplishment. As workers, patriots, parents, and friends. And along with James Chanceman Gregory, they have laid the foundation for the modern African-American experience in Morris County. By comparison to the vast numbers of 20th century poor Black Americans who lived in the stark environs of the great cities or along the dusky roads of the Jim Crow system, their lives seem fortunate. But there is something more to consider. By challenging racial barriers unknown to most of those in the larger community of Morris County, they have kept alive quintessential American ideals: the tenacious pursuit of opportunity, the belief that individuals can triumph over adversity, and that success is possible if an individual so demands.
Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring with harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound.
Major funding for this program was provided by the New Jersey Historical Commission, Department of State, and the Geraldine R. Dodge Foundation, with additional funding from these supporters.